Hi, welcome to Gotham Reader Radio. I'm your host, the Gotham Reader, and today we don't have any corrections from the previous issue, but we do have a recap because this is the first time in Batman comics that we have a two-parter. Once again, I'm not going to be revealing the title. I kind of want to keep that a secret because I do think the twist is quite fun. But that being said, for those of you who are following along, you probably already know the twist, or at least those of you who are familiar with this story know the twist as well. But with that being said, let's just jump in today's issue so we could get to the thrilling conclusion in Detective Comics number 32, with cover art being done by Fred Guardianier and being written by just Gardner Fox in this issue, which is kind of interesting because Bill Finger was credited with assisting him on the previous issue, but not in this one. On art, we have once again Bob Kane and Sheldon Moldoff. And lastly, it was printed in October 1939. For those of you who would like to follow along, I'm going to be once again using Batman Chronicles Volume 1, but much like Detective Comics number 31, number 32 can be found in quite a few collections. It is a, fairly popular story. You can find it in the Golden Age Omnibus and the Batman Archives, as well as a few other different reprints. And with all that being said, if you didn't catch the previous issue and you would like to catch up, I will also leave a link to the last episode in the description below. But now with all that out of the way, let's just move into the issue proper by taking a look at our cover page. And once again, we have an amazing cover by Fred Guardianier. Very, very detailed, and fits the detective comic motif. That being said, as usual with Fred Guardianier's work, it doesn't have too much to do with the Batman. So, while, once again, an awesome cover, I think we're just going to move past it so we could just jump into the story. And we get to our title splash, where we see that Bob Kane and Sheldon Moldoff are starting to experiment with the lettering for the title splashes. In this one, we're starting to see more defined, like block lettering that is really popular for the time, but it's going to be a style that Bob Kane and Sheldon Moldoff that are going to lean into moving forward. Another thing for some of our more, close-eyed viewers is that this is the first time we're seeing the Batman title without any form of hyphen or divider between the Bat and Man part of the name. In the last two issues, we had Batman's noggin splitting up the word. Now it's just Batman. And that's going to more or less be how it is going to be moving forward. We also get this really awesome, full body image of the Batman. And he's covering himself with the cowl that really gives him this, mysterious vibe that I think early Batman's known for. Now we have our blurb, which kind of gives us an idea of where we're at in the story, in that it says, following his fiancée, the Batman, in reality Bruce Wayne, has trailed a sinister figure, cowled like a monk, into Hungary. Like an animal of prey, the Batman watches his quarry. So for those who are completely out of context, if for some reason you haven't read the previous issue or saw the previous video, Batman is currently in Hungary. The reason for this is his fiancée, Julie Madison, who was introduced last issue, seems to be under some type of hypnotic spell from a dark figure known as the Monk, who may be some type of paranormal creature not of this world. Due to machinations and other comic book shenanigans, Batman had ended up in New York City, now in Hungary, pursuing this dangerous criminal. And now with that set up, we can move into the story proper as we see Batman begins to trail a carriage in the dark wooded forests of the mysterious country known as Hungary. Batman leaps onto the carriage and knocks out the driver while throwing a gas pellet into the passenger box, knocking out anyone inside, who Batman hopes is his prey, the monk. Unfortunately for him, that is not the case, and what Batman finds in his place seems to be another mysterious woman. Batman then takes the young woman into his Bat-gyro and flies into the Carlton Mountains, where he has been keeping Julie Madison at a secluded hotel. The woman then regains consciousness and reveals to Julie Madison that her name is Dalla, but not much else. Batman, uncertain what to do next, decides to stay watch over Julie and the mysterious woman. In the late hours of the night, Batman hears a rustling and sees Dalla exiting the room with blood on her lips. Batman, in a panic, tries to stop Dalla, but Dalla, able to catch the Batman off guard, grabs a statue and delivers a striking blow across Batman's head, knocking him unconscious. Batman wakes later and quickly checks on the safety of Julie, where he finds 2 mysterious marks on her neck resembling that of the bite of a vampire. Batman, acting quick, knowing he can't let Dalla escape, pursues the young woman into the forest, where he tracks her down and accuses her of being a vampire. Dalla, in a state of distress, says that no, she too fears the monk and demands that the Batman kill her for him. Batman, uncertain what game this woman is playing, says that he will be the decider of if the monk needs to die or not. Dalla then explains to Bruce that she knows exactly where the monk is located and will take him to his location. Batman, seeing little to no other option, returns to Julie and leaves her with some money, telling her that if she finds herself being called by the monk, that she must fight his call. Batman then proceeds with Dalla to the mysterious Cathala Mountains to find the Mad Monk. So, couple of things. Number one, while I think it is fairly obvious with this being a two-parter, the general flow of this issue is quite different than the last couple of issues, mainly because we do have a general setup, but at the same time we kind of don't, because when we left Batman at the end of last issue, we were in Hungary, but we didn't know where the monk was, which they continue along that path, which I personally like. It builds a lot of mystery to this villain who, up to this point in the Batman's career, is something quite different to what he's fought previously. And because what he might be is something supernatural if we're to trust the direction that Gardner Fox is pushing us into. But with that being said, I guess I could reveal the title of this issue and the previous issue, which is Batman versus the Vampire, which I'll talk a little bit more after the story has concluded, but I do think that's an interesting concept for a couple of reasons. But I want to make some other observations, or I guess maybe just things that I like. Number one, it is really fun to see Batman in a setting outside of the city. We've been doing it for the last couple of issues, so to see Batman kind of in this spooky forest, running around, trying to figure out what's going on and where is this mad monk. I personally like it. It's a different change of pace. Number two, and it's not that big of a deal, is we do see Batman interact with Julie. Julie Madison doesn't know Batman is Bruce Wayne, for those of you who aren't aware. So she has this kind of weird, I guess, damsel in distress role, but also love interests. But the love interest doesn't know that her husband is, or soon to be husband, is the person saving her, which creates, I'm certain, a ton of conflicting emotions that could create some fairly interesting storytelling moving forward. Whether Gardner Fox or any future writers decide to pick up on that, we shall see. But with those statements out of the way, let's just keep rolling with the story. We then resume our story with Batman and Dala both boarding the Bat-Gyro and beginning their journey to the Cathala Mountains. But on their way to the hideout of the Mad Monk, the strangest thing occurs when a silver net, seemingly powered by magic, springs from the ground and snares the Bat-Gyro, slowly pulling it earthward. Dala then reveals her treachery, mocking the Batman, proclaiming how a puny mortal could ever face off against the mighty monk. Once the Bat-Gyro is pulled completely to the ground, the monk reveals himself, greeting the Batman before using his eerie powers to ensnare his mind. Batman, now helpless due to the strange spell of the mysterious being, has no choice but to listen as the mad monk begins to rave at how he will feed the Batman to his werewolves. But this end is not enough for Dala, who demands that the monk summons Julie Madison so Batman could suffer the fate of knowing what fate the young woman is doomed to. The hooded mastermind, agreeing with the sadistic plan, uses his dark powers to compel Julie Madison to make her way to his hideout, forcing her to go through the very forest that the Bat-Gyro had to fly over. Once Julie Madison arrives, the Mad Monk then reveals the true limits of his occult-like powers, as he himself then turns into a wolf to summon the nearby werewolves to his den to feast upon the Batman. After this, the Mad Monk turns back to his human form and reveals to Batman that it's only going to be a matter of time before Julie Madison herself too turns into a werewolf just like the rest of his servants. The devilish monk then turns back to his human form before committing his final act of villainy, tossing the Batman into a pit where his werewolves wait. But Batman, using his bat-like willpower, breaks free from the spell at that very moment, and using his silk rope tries to throw a line to escape from the pit of doom. But unfortunately, the lasso misses and Batman finds himself surrounded by the wolves. Thinking quick, he uses his gas pellets to create a distraction to escape from the vicious creatures. The gas incapacitates the wolves long enough for Batman to combine his batarang with his silk rope to use it as a weight to lasso himself out of the pit. He then begins to search for Julie in the mysterious hideout, luckily finding her asleep in a hidden room. Batman then begins searching the room for anything that may help him in his battle against the vampires. Luckily, he finds a silver statue that he then melts down into bullets, which he loads into his sidearm, intending to end the vampires' lives. He then searches the hideout, only to find the vampires asleep in their open caskets. Then Batman, with his bat-like brutality, blasts the two vampires, proclaiming, "Never again will you harm any mortal being." He then returns to Julie, now awake, who proclaims, "I don't know who you are, but you saved my life, and I shall be forever grateful." They then board the Batplane and fly off into the eerie, hungry night, leaving the land of history and werewolves behind them. And that's the end. Wow. I have so many conflicted emotions about this issue. Okay, so in general, it's a good issue. I like the story. I think personally it's a conclusion that we're eventually going to get to one way or another. The idea of the Batman fighting a vampire just makes sense. I know he's more of a grounded detective comic, but for as long as we know that the Batman's going to be around, you kind of think the idea of a man who dresses as a bat is fighting a supernatural bat hybrid man thing. I don't know. It just makes sense to tell this story. That being said, Gardner Fox seems to have a very interesting interpretation of what is a vampire. He seems to be mixing it all up and coming up with something a little bit new. But at the same time, werewolves and vampires aren't really in mainstream culture. I think Dracula and the Wolfman is still a couple of years off before ever hitting theaters. So maybe Gardner was just trying to make something work. And I guess you could say he did. Because for the most part, the Mad Monk or the Master Monk or just the Monk is he's a villain who lives up to his description from the blurb of the previous issue in that he is truly a foe that tested Batman's mettle to the point that Batman had to just get a gun and shoot him. But like it is cool. It is cool that we have to see Batman truly move into this level of superheroics. And while a vampire is not, I think, the go-to concept when we think of uh, things that superheroes fight, it is a entity that is out of the realm of normality. You could still argue that Doctor Death is, for the most part, a plausible concept. You could probably find a crazy person making a poison to threaten the world every other week, I'm going to guess. But a full blown vampire with the ability to turn into a wolf, to possess people, not just in Hungary, somehow has this power able to manipulate individuals all across the globe, it seems. It was truly a challenge for Batman. And because of that, I think Gardner wrote himself into a corner, or he just ran out of time. While I do really, really like the story, I'm not blind to the fact that it falls apart once you start staring at it too hard, as well as the fact that near the end it feels incredibly rushed, not just from a narrative standpoint, even some of the final panels to this issue just look a little bit odd. But at the end of the day, it is the first Batman epic, so I think there is room for error. The idea of trying to tell a story outside of one issue must have been incredibly challenging for the time. Um, and to be honest, we're not going to see another author make an attempt at a multi-issue story for quite some time. But it's a classic. Batman comes face to face with an entity so evil, he has no choice but to make an exception and use a gun. But that being said, at the same time, I guess it's a little bit hindsight. Because for the most part, Batman, and this is kind of spoiling some stuff in the future for people who aren't maybe familiar with the Batman mythos. In time, he's going to have a very complex relationship to firearms and using firearms, but that hasn't been really ironed out yet. So the only awkwardness, I guess, for this whole situation is if Batman's out of gun, why is he barely using it now? And personally, I think it's because it takes away from the mystique of the character. Like, sure, we've already had mass vigilantes using guns at this point. The Crimson Avenger being the primary example. Even ones who use non-lethal guns, the Green Hornet, as well as the Sandman. Or I guess the Sandman doesn't exist yet. Well, okay, but definitely the Green Hornet and the Crimson Avenger definitely have already shown use of guns. So it is just jarring only in the aspect of, well, why do you have all these gadgets if you're just going to use a gun? Or why do you have all these gadgets if you could just use a gun instead? And of course, the reason is Batman is a superhero. And while he's not the superhero that we're most familiar with him in the modern sense, his core concept is very, very much based close to the progenitor. And by that, I mean the Superman. Like the dude in the tights and the cape. Those types of characters in time, you don't see them using firearms because it just goes against the ethos of the character, like the fundamental ideas of what a Cape Crusader is. With all that being said, this is still only the sixth Batman story ever published. Like, I get it. I'm overthinking things. At the end of the day, what happened was Batman's love interest, Julie Madison, who, well, interesting character, didn't really get too much more of her in this issue, other than general damsel in distress, uh, gets possessed by a vampire, and Bruce Wayne has to be the Batman to stop this evil entity. Uh, it's, I'm going to say, it's swinging for the fences. Uh, It was Gardner Fox doing something new and different with Batman. And while it's not going to be the direction Batman moves into, it is going to create its own niche in the Batman mythos that we could kind of look back at and go, okay, yeah, we could do these kind of strange stories with the Batman. And more importantly, we could also do stories where Batman maybe goes up against things that aren't entirely human, whether that be supernatural entities or superpowered entities. But at least for now, I think we're going to continue seeing the progression, but I don't think we're going to see a adventure is this grand for quite some time. But with all of that out of the way, or I guess with all my opinions out in the open on this issue, where do you guys stand on it? What were your thoughts? Did you think it was a jumbled mess? Did you think it was the first real Batman epic that I'm painting it out to be? Did you enjoy it? What were your thoughts on the Monk? What are your thoughts on Batman and Julie Madison? Um, there's a lot to really dig into in this one, and I'm certain there's things I've missed. But I think it's time to lay this one to rest. Thank you for listening to me yammer on this one. I do really, really like this issue despite its flaws. But let's leave a spoiler for next issue and call it a day. Which, Batman fights Napoleon? Thank you for listening.